Hello there and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about setting up terrain. So as you can see on my mat here, I've got the objectives marked, and which is technically not allowed according to the rule book, but it's very helpful in setting up your terrain and being able to figure out where to put stuff before actually putting the objectives out and then having to measure and then move stuff and then measure again. So if I do end up at events where they're going to follow those rules to a T, I would have to bring a different mat, but this is my quick setup mat basically. So when shifting priorities was the only mission out there, I put the markings there for that 3x3 grid, and I used the marking on the card itself, which is from Ahsoka's markings there. So that's the 9x9 grid, and then Sabotage Showdown uses the same middle points, but has the backline points moved. So I used the little symbol from, I think it's basically Hondo's pirate type hat. So I put those markings there. So you can see that the setup would be either going from this way or that way. Once you could have gone either way with shifting priorities, but Sabotage Showdown, I've only have it marked to be going across this way. Now, I have the core set terrain, of course, but also the high ground terrain. So my go-to setup involves both, or all of the terrain from both. But I did have a setup that I thought was decent from when I just had the core set. So I thought I would go through that, go through my setup for the core with high ground. But I've set it up a few times, or quite a few times, and even though I'm starting to set it up at events and not playing on it myself, I think I want to try to find another setup that's that it works kind of just as well. So we'll go through the two setups that I have done before, and then I'm going to try to figure out another one. Now, so I have the core set terrain in front of me. We've got the vent building, the tech shed, I think they called it. I'm not going to worry about scatter terrain because that I feel like I put out a little more not randomly, but it varies a lot more than the buildings, because I want the buildings to mean that there's going to be elevated objectives. So my buildings tend to stay in the similar spots. So what I did, when I was building, what I did was there's the tech shed and the event building, the towers, which I put fully together with a ladder glued on for one of them. But when I only had the core, I wanted to be able to cover more of the map. So I actually left the bottom part on its own and put a ladder on the side with the array in order to kind of tripod this so that it could sit on its own. So that allowed me to cover more of the board when I only had the terrain, only had the core box. And it's actually been really nice also with the high ground to be able to shift where that second elevation is, instead of just having the normal towers. So that's something that when people have played on my terrain, they take a look and they kind of realize that that's what's going on, and they're like, oh, that's a really good idea. And then somebody's tower actually like broke apart, or came apart during one of the games, so they're like, oh, I might just do what you did. Aside from that, I did basically one gantry with 3 middle pieces. I did 2 with 2 middle pieces, and then 1 with 1 middle. And I did the same for the high ground when I got that, because it comes with the same amount of gantries and stuff. Now, I remember from having the core box only that I had kind of an L shape going. I'm not sure if I used the tech shed or not for that, but I probably had something. I'm not sure if it would have been the tech shed or the vent building for that, but let's see. I started with kind of an L, so this objective is going to be on the level 2 terrain, and on top of that it's going to be on a narrow top there, which if your bases are 50 millimeter, you're not going to be able to be on top of. So I'm trying to get this onto. I wonder if I use the other building then. I had kind of an L like that, and then I put the other at an angle here, and so I would have had something like this, and then used a couple of the legs to extend. Maybe I used the 4 here. I don't think I need the 3. I think the long gantry I must have used as part of the L. And then, because I'm using 2 here, putting the top piece of that tower in the middle, and then using some legs in order to hold up the other end of this gantry here. So this was good for getting 5 of the objectives, 5 out of the 9 objectives onto higher elevation, which to me kind of seemed like the point of the way they set up the game, to actually have a decent amount of the objectives at a non-ground elevation. And it still only has 1 of the objectives in a place where the 50 millimeter bases can't get to. So that's something that I see people complain about or debate about a lot, is having too many objectives that the 50 millimeter bases can't get to. But I think that having 1 on a narrow tower out of your 9 or 7 in the case of Sabotage Showdown is perfectly reasonable. And so this is a setup you could use, potentially swapping out which building, but you just might have to adjust which length of gantries you're using where. But if you do the L shape and just a diagonal, then this board is somewhat symmetric in the sense that it's making a plus sign of which objectives are elevated, but it's not perfectly symmetric because you've got an L and a diagonal, couple diagonal line there. But that worked decently when I only had the core. Now I think at that point I was attempting to use all of the ladders that were available in the core box. I would not recommend that you do that. There is such thing as too many ingress points for sure. And I've learned now that we're further into the game that it is nice to have the ingress points not lead straight back to the objectives. Especially my list I was playing recently was Maul with Obi-Wan, and I would be very much taking advantage of the hunker tokens and his ability to have people who are attacked dash back, also including the commandos so they can climb back. And so if there's ingress points right up to that objective, then even the dash back, or I had Barris in the list, her repositions off of defensive expertise could all just get them back to the objective, which I realize is quite annoying, but that's the way that team worked. So anyway, this one's glued on, so I can't really move it away from the objective. This guy's glued on too, but the objective would be more over here. It would be in range, put people in range. The other one should be around here, so I would maybe put one against the gantry around here. Same over here, like along the gantry here, so that's not right on the objectives. Stuff like that. So maybe adding 1, 2, maybe 3 ingress points to this setup. All right, so now we'll look at adding the high ground terrain pack to that. So the high ground tower is a very good centerpiece for your terrain. It allows you can have a gantry along here going that way, along here going that way, or either elevation going this way. So there's lots of options, lots of flexibility with it. So I tend to send it up so that the higher elevation is above the middle point. And so what happens is the one side, I end up putting an ingress point kind of over here, and the one side, technically when it pops up, will have some line of sight blocking, the line of sight blocked from the other person's deployment side, but their ingress points are slightly further away. So somewhere around here, although I'm sure we'll have to shift that slightly as we go, because what we're going to do is we're going to kind of have a line of gantries going over to this corner, ending in one of the towers with a ladder here. And so the objective should end up here, and we'll have the gantry so that this objective is also going to end up on that gantry. So I think we use one with 2 middle pieces, one with 1. And so that kind of covers the middle and this point from showdown and the point from shifting priorities there. Then coming the other way, I put also a tower on with the ladder again on this corner, so making it symmetric there. And we'll just simply use a gantry with the 3 middle pieces in between the high ground and this tower. Now I'll try to do the same thing over here where this objective for Sabotage Showdown is going to end up on the gantry, and this one from Shifting Priorities is going to be on the skinny part of the tower. And now, as you'll notice, there's no gantry from the top here, so this will be our one objective that is on a small, a narrow tower that the larger bases can't get to. Then I put the tech building over here, but we'll shift it around depending on the rest of our setup. We'll have a small, the bottom of the small tower with it, and just with the shortest of the gantries. And so now what I can do is take my trusty tripod tower piece and set it up just on the middle of the gantry wherever I want. Because then I'm going to put a or the 2 middle pieces gantry in connecting to the high ground tower again. And there we are. So it only really covers the Shifting Priorities corner point here, but it makes their travel to the middle a little more interesting, because there's the ingress point that's stuck on the tripod there, and I would generally put a ingress point somewhere maybe on the tower over here or something. So this ingress point doesn't actually take them to an objective, and it also doesn't take them all the way up to the top. So you gotta weigh your options of, do I just take that ingress point? They can technically dash to here or advance across this gap here, but you're not getting to the right elevation for this objective. I also cover this point. Sometimes it takes a 3, sometimes it takes a 4, or 2 middle pieces versus 3 middle pieces. And I try to move it so that's on the corner to make just a little bit more difficult to jump that gap. But I think generally if people are able to advance from over here, they'll get to it. But it might be just out of range of getting a dash, or maybe you got to be right on the edge to get the dash over there. So I'm trying to put that as far as possible, but putting this middle side objective on the gantry. So that's kind of this part of the board. And then I like to put the vent building so that the objective is on here. Now, I guess this is another, I realized in one game that this is another spot where the large bases can't get to it, or they can't sit directly on it anyway. But I put a gantry here, and so they can sit at the proper elevation, just not on top of the objective. So if somebody, it is technically blockable. I realized in a game when I was playing Grievous, if someone's sitting around here, then it is can't fit your large base here. You'd have to go over here, which is going to be out of range. And we'll just shift it so that our middle objective on this side is also on the gantry. So now what happens is, so I don't actually use one of the gantries. And what you can maybe see is that if you're playing shifting priorities, this objective and this objective is going to be on the ground. So that's two objectives on the ground. Everything else has some sort of elevation to it. These three being on, what would you call it? The kind of second elevation, I'll say. And these ones and these ones are on the first elevation. Then if we're playing Sabotage Showdown, it's a similar thing. There's objective here on the ground, an objective here on the ground, and but everything else is at a higher elevation. So this one's level 1. The three, or no, these two are still level 1, and then this one and this one are elevation 2. So it works out to be symmetrical in which objectives are on the ground and which are not, but visually it's not completely symmetric. I'm noticing now as I set this up that the two objectives that have skinnier placement points are both on this side. So that might be something that I try to tackle with attempting to find a new configuration. But yeah, I have found that this is a pretty fair setup. I'll generally put a long ladder here, a short one either against the building here, and then one along here, as I mentioned. So really that's only adding three or four ingress points outside of what's already attached to the buildings. And then that makes for some interesting choices because I see a tendency online for people to make kind of lanes with their terrain that go along the grid of shifting priorities, but that often creates just lanes where it's like, okay, I want to get to this ingress point, so I'm just going to move along this lane until I hit an ingress and then continue moving down that lane. Whereas when things are at a 45-degree angle like that, then it makes for some interesting choices of, well, I want to get to the middle, but let's say I have a Magna Guard, so how am I going to tackle the ingress points? Do I move this way to get this ingress point just for the elevation so that I can move in for these objectives? And same on this side. Am I going to go just straight towards this objective or take an ingress point here, hoping to take the other ingress point up? Or then you're actually starting to consider, do I jump, do I climb, and stuff like that. Now, scatter terrain wise, I'll try to put some pieces like the optional pieces of the tech tower, or some other terrain that I've had 3D printed. I'll try to put that in kind of this bigger open space on the ground. And then, of course, with those two packs, you have a ton of crates. So I'll try to put maybe 3 crates together in kind of an opening here too, because some people may define that to be something that you can sit on, and then, but you would have to stop your movement there and then do another move that would go up, because technically if you're on this, then this is no longer a difference of 3 inches, so you can actually move without climbing from here to elevation 1. So I try to set up one of those kind of on either side in case people define this as one piece of terrain that you can sit on, and then I'll spread some crates kind of in between and near objectives on the gantries, so that just people aren't so free to move wherever they want. Say like if I have a crate here, if the objective's here and they get a dash, but then they have to think about, okay, where can I actually fit the base? I can't just move along this gantry however I want to be exactly where I want. So it's good to take a look at your board and try to make people think about what they want to do rather than just moving freely. And so put some crates that are kind of going to be a little bit in the way as they move around. The odd one where people can kind of use it as a backstop when they're on objectives, and also things where people can't just freely push their opponent off too. Like if there's stuff down here, then that'll make it more difficult. They have to figure out which way they can actually push, where they can actually land on the ground fully from that push. All right, so now I'm going to try to come up with something new, and it's like I said before, the high ground tower is it's makes for such a good centerpiece that it's kind of tempting to keep it as a centerpiece. I also mentioned that I like to have it things more diagonal going on there. So I think we will try to keep with that rather than putting it as a centerpiece that now just goes in the middle along objectives, either just in line with the grid. So what should we do here? Maybe we'll put it in a corner. Let's put it like this maybe. So we'll have level 2, on level 2 here. And what we're gonna try to do, I think, is maybe have a gantry come along and hit these 2 points, and then also these 2 points. So, what do we want to do for that? Let's do tech shed over here. That'll be out of line though. Let's do vent building here. And then we'll do kind of the thing that we had before, where we put these, the vent building to my kind of half tower here. Let's see if that's actually, yeah, we can put that over top of the showdown one. And then here, I'll put this guy there. To the middle. All right. Maybe we'll put the vent building in the actual middle. And so that would make the center objective something that the larger bases aren't going to be able to get onto. Because I'm thinking what I want to do is have the objectives in the middle be the ones along the middle line, be more so the ones the 500 mil bases can't get on, just so that that might add a little more, make the sides a bit more fair, I guess. Let's see. Go this way. Use a long one. No. Middle size. There. So this one will be up here. Yeah. I'll do that for now. Let's see. And now I've got the towers left. Swap this one out so that we have the two towers that have ladders attached to the left. Now we're not going to be able to hit both of these objectives. And there's more on this side. Maybe we just have this cover the showdown side. Showdown objective. Now on this side, we've got the two corner ones from shifting priorities still on the ground level. But let's see. Could we maybe cover these three? How far is the long one? That's not bad. Okay, so let's do this. So we kind of are ending up pretty much in line with the grid instead of diagonals, because kind of from me starting with this piece here. But this might end up interesting enough, hopefully. So it doesn't quite sit in the grooves flat, but yeah, this one. The thing is, with the gantry on this elevation, now the 50 meter bases can sit on here. So technically the one from these two from shifting priorities are on level 1, and then but if you do sabotage showdown, then the objective should end up on level 2. Now I do kind of have the ladders going coming up in between objectives, so these are kind of all easy to get to from the ground. And but yeah, then it would just be, so it's going to kind of depend on your mission which side you're going to want, which is an interesting consideration, because if you because if you're on shifting priorities, these three corners are going to be on the ground, but then on Sabotage Showdown, only this one is on the ground. So, and I might be able to do something interesting, maybe, hopefully, to add scatter terrain in those areas and make things interesting there, but generally it looks okay. Wonder if we could, yeah, we need a 4-length one to get between those objectives. I mean, I could make it so that on Sabotage Showdown they're all at an elevation of some sort. Yeah, I think that covers that. So I'll have to test, I guess, whether I like this gantry here, because now it's very easy to be able to jump this gap. From here, you would have to go down and then go back up. But if I do it like this, then you could be on this objective and then simply just walk over the gap in order to get from one to the other. But not a bad layout, I feel. I do have one more gantry. I wonder if I should try to, do I try to get one more? Could maybe get this objective up. Then it would move. Oops. Oh, things are twisted here. Yeah, because I had to turn it to get this one on there. I could maybe move. Let's see. It's still on. It's kind of barely on. Maybe. Where's my objective? There it is. I can move this back. Okay, so that's on there. This one ends up around here. And then is that long enough? Not quite. I mean, unless I just use all legs there. And just put this gantry on its own. Although it'll be the shortest gantry with all 4 legs on it. But let's see. Kind of butt it up against there anyway. Now that would make things pretty annoying trying to move under. especially if we butt it up there. I mean, we could put it just on its own. I mean, does it look silly on its own? Probably. But then we're kind of following our rule where where we have a symmetric number of points at elevations and on the ground and all that. So we'll see kind of how I feel on the day when setting up stuff, if I want to add this there or not. But yeah, I do like the look of it at a glance. So let me know your thoughts in the comments about any of the setups that I've made. I think ingress wise, I would probably not put an ingress on here. You've got the, I think I would make them use the points from the high ground tower itself in this area. Maybe put an ingress on here, maybe around the short building. Yeah, maybe on this kind of far side of the short building, so that it's not right up. I mean, it might still be within contesting range, but not easily within contesting range of the Sabotage Showdown one. We have ladders here already, which feels like it might be too much, but they're already glued. And then I'd maybe put one here as well. That does make it a little bit poor ingress wise on this side compared to that side. So maybe I would move it on along to here, so it's on this side of the board, and you could take the ingress and that's probably within an inch to be over that way more. And then again, as before, I'd probably focus a little more scatter around those corners, pop some in the gaps here and there, and then put some crates on those gantries to mess with movement a little bit. But yeah, again, let me know your thoughts in the comments, especially on this one, because I'll probably do this setup or incorporate some suggestions for the next tournament that we have in a few weeks. And yeah, I'll see you next time.